Hey Michelle, how you doing?
Hey, Mar, I'm all right. How are you?
Doing pretty well. I wanted to ask how your swim training is going and swim racing as well. I think we haven't touched base on that in a couple weeks. How's it going?
Yeah. Well, it's going. It's not going perfectly, which honestly could make for a really good discussion here because we can hey, let's watch how Michelle's dealing with adversity. So yeah, this year I've been swim training since January, and it was progressing and just getting better and better, and I was really excited for the swim series. And the swim series that I'm talking about is the North Shore Swim Series. There's four races every other Saturday throughout the summer, and they increase gradually in length. So, the first swim was, I guess, I don't know, what was it, 4 weeks ago now? It went better than I expected, and I mean, I got pummeled a little bit, but it was cool, and I won my age group, and I was really happy, and I just was yep, it was almost just check the box. That's what I would have expected to happen based on my fitness or whatever, and I was feeling pretty good about it. And then the second race, there's a very good possibility that I didn't give it as much, what it's a word, respect or focus or whatever. I took a lot
Hmm.
for granted, we'll say that. And then, but it wasn't that I wasn't trying. So the second race is all in Waimea Bay. It's 1.2 miles roughly. It goes around these rocks in Waimea Bay. So there's really only sort of one buoy that's out. Where you start, you swim diagonally across the bay for 500 or 600 meters, and then you swim around this giant rock formation that serves as the first major buoy. And then you swim back across the bay where they did put up a big red buoy. And then from there you swim diagonally back to the beach to finish. Very straightforward. I've done it 20 times. I felt like I knew what I was doing. The problem was I was with a decent group heading out to the rock. They started us 3 minutes behind the men, which was a real problem because the men that we catch before the rock,
Right.
if I've put 3 minutes on you in 500 meters, right, their breaststroking is what's happening. And something I haven't really mentioned on this podcast, some of my local friends know, but I've been having some issues with my vision in the last couple of months where my vision has just started to go way downhill. I mean, a couple of years ago I started wearing readers and that felt normal and fine, but recently it's been getting significantly worse, and it feels like every week it's just incrementally a little bit worse. And but again, I wasn't thinking I wasn't planning on my vision being a handicap for me in this race. I just didn't think about it. But I'll tell you what, I got around that rock, and now we're swimming sort of into the sun. There was a little bit of chop in my face, and somehow I got lost, or I got separated from a group that I was with. So now I'm swimming, and I'm how am I completely alone? There are 600 people swimming in this race. 600 people. How
Yeah.
am I alone right now? I can't see anyone. And I'm looking around, and the thing is, I think because I'm an experienced swimmer, I'm so used to. I mean, there are times where I've done races where I didn't see a buoy, but then I would just hit the buoy on my shoulder, right? I just am a homing pigeon at times. And so I've developed a lot of confidence in my ability to just keep going, keep your head down, and you're going to get there and you're on the right track. Don't waste time looking up and looking around and blah, blah, blah. While that advice may be good at times, it's also not good at times because, I mean, it finally at some point I just stopped, and I stopped in the middle of the bay. I took my goggles off. I'm where am I? And I'm looking around, and it's I'm still hardly, it's I couldn't get my sight on really anything. I couldn't see the buoy. And so I'm using
That's scary.
sort of landmarks, and thinking we'll just keep heading toward that land, right? And as you get closer, then at some point you'll see it. But by the time I got to it, and again, I wasn't with anyone. The long story is I was just lost swimming by myself out in the bay. I ended up stopping 5 or 6 times to take my goggles off and look because I couldn't see anything with my goggles on. And then even when I stopped to look, it was I could barely see. And at some point, even swimming in, this lifeguard was coming up, and because I was just going the completely wrong direction, even from the finish line. And this lifeguard on a surfboard came up, and he's blowing his whistle at me. He's trying to get me to go the other way. I'm stopping. I'm I can't see anything. And so I got in, and I mean, the end of the story is I got my ass kicked. I was fifth in my age group, which has never happened ever. In 20
Wow.
years, I've never not been. At one time, I wasn't top three, but I was pregnant. So this is the only time that I've not been top three. I mean, so I'm not mad about getting fifth, but it was a real kick in the ass of oh, don't take this for granted
Yeah.
because if you don't swim well, and it's like swim strategically and swim like smart and swim accurately. And so like there's way more to it than just like how fit are you. And I think
Right.
I've just really leaned on fitness for the longest time because I have enough ocean experience to like, I feel like I know what I'm doing. But guess what? Like when you don't have good vision, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah,
So that
that's
was like, it was disappointing, but in a way, it's funny because like one of my athletes, we were like walking back to the car after, and because I was like, wow, like I'm now like behind in the series. And she's like, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, honestly, like I'm like I'm drooling, like I'm salivating,
yeah.
like I would honestly like prefer to be in a hunter position, like of like, oh, okay, like that was such a disaster, and like if I don't correct this significantly, like I'm not going to win this, which honestly is fine. Like I really don't care if I win it or not, but it's still like a fun. It's nice to have a goal,
It's
right? And
yeah.
so like
Yeah.
here's a goal that like I care about, but I don't like. I will not lose
Mhm.
sleep if I don't win my age group in this series. But it's still like a fun thing to go for. So anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. Now I'm like I'm. So the situation is this: 45 seconds behind. Race 3 is this weekend. My vision is worse now than it was 2 weeks ago, and I can share with you like what that's about in a minute. But so this next race is a point to point, like the first one was. And so I'm like, okay, and I'm deciding that now I'm going to take my like quote unquote handicap into consideration, like into my race
Hmm.
plan, and be like, okay, like I know now that this is something that I'm going to have to overcome if I'm going to have a race result that I want, right? Or I'm happy
Hmm.
with. So like, it's not anymore just a matter of like, am I happy with my effort? Did I take a decent line? Like now I get to incorporate other like aspects of race strategy where it's like, okay, it is absolutely imperative that I stay in a group,
Right.
right? Like, absolutely cannot trust myself to just navigate on my own the way that I used to be able to do. So it's like the start's going to be more important. And the good news in this one, it should be like men and women start together. Because I will say, one of the things that was a problem at Waimea was when they started us 3 minutes behind the men, because my vision's not that good, by the time I would be like on top of this guy who's breaststroking, he's literally about to kick me in the face. You know what I mean? Because I'm like,
Right.
oh, there's a guy
Yeah.
there, like like that I didn't see until I was right on top of him. And so I felt like I had to be really careful about that. So I think with this one, if we all start together, that's good because then we don't have to like manage it as an obstacle course, right? Like getting
Hmm.
around slower swimmers ahead. And there's more of a chance that I'll land in a group, right? Because if we all just
You
kind of
just have
start
more.
hard
Yeah.
and yeah, like, I mean, there'll be 80 people that go off the front, but like if I can get in a group of people that swim about like me and then just be like, my mission is to stay
Stay.
here.
Yeah.
Then it's like there's still like my swim fitness. I'm still confident in my swim fitness. I'm just not confident in my ability to navigate because I can't see that well. So people were questioning and asking like what's going on with the vision.
Hmm.
And I'll share this story because this is something I did not know was possible to happen. But if you're young, my advice to you is if when you're outside, wear sunglasses a lot because for decades I really didn't. Like I wore sunglasses when I would ride a bike, but rarely when I ran. And then just generally being outside, like I commonly didn't wear sunglasses. Apparently over time, your eyes can absorb a lot of UV light and
Hmm.
rays. And I went to the eye doctor last week and it turns out that I have some aggressive form of cataracts, which is like,
Oh,
so it's
wow.
like
Wow.
the lens
Yeah.
on the back of my eye is, it's almost like looking through a foggy lens.
Hmm.
And so everything, like right now, looking at this computer screen, like my face is blurry, your face is blurry. Like I can't read anything on the screen. Like if there's a timer up, I can't read it. Like, and it's not something that glasses can fix. So apparently it's a surgery only fix. So like the good news is this, it's a surgery only fix. The surgery is pretty straightforward and simple. I have a call with
Hmm.
the surgeon tomorrow to get it scheduled, and we'll see how long it takes for me to get that in. But what was interesting too, and just I don't, not that we want to like delve off into like the healthcare situation in our country, but I'm having a chat with this, right? I'm having a chat with this. I'm with the Kaiser system, and people like to give Kaiser like all sorts of shit, right? Like, because it's a contained sort of system where we pay into Kaiser, the doctors are on salary instead of private practice,
Hmm.
and everything is managed. So it's like the providers are being managed with the same sort of bucket of energy that the people are paying in. So like I'm paying insurance, but it's like all within this whole system. And We've been with them for probably 16 years now. And it's unreal to me that that every system isn't like this, because the
Mhm.
benefits, like, I get what people say, oh, you can't choose your doctors and you just, like, I have to go see whoever the surgeon is who does these surgeries. Like, that's who I'm going to get to see. And I'm just going to trust and cross my fingers that that's a good surgeon, right? So far, my experience has been the doctors at Kaiser all like have been really good. But there's several benefits to the system, I think. My experience has been is that, one, like, my whole medical chart is in one place. So like
Right.
when I went to see this eye doctor, she pulled up my chart and looked at it before, and she has a really good idea of like my whole health history, because like everything is in
Mhm.
there for her to look over and see. And it's like that part's really good. Then when she said that, because I have cataracts in both eyes, and
Mhm.
everybody that I had talked to who's had this surgery done before, they said that they've had one eye done, and then like 2 weeks later you go in for the second eye. And like, it sounds like a pain in the butt, right? To have to like go in
Right.
twice for like two different surgeries and blah, blah. And so I just assumed that that was the way. And she said, no, we'll do both eyes at the same time. And I'm like, that's like not what I've heard is the case. And I said, why is it? Cause I'm curious. I'm always asking questions. Why is it that my friends have all said that their surgeries, they've done it twice? And she goes, sometimes it's a money thing. Like, the doctors can bill for two surgeries. Right. So like I was like, oh my God, that's what they do. So like they do your eye not because it's better for you,
Right.
but because it's better for them, that they get to bill on two different surgeries if they just do one eye at a time. But apparently it's completely plausible and feasible to just do
Right.
both eyes at the same time. And then like me as a patient, like I only have to go through the anxiety and rigmarole of that once, right? Let it heal
Right.
once. I'm like, that's so much better.
That's
And so, anyway, then this doctor and I went on and have a long conversation about what I appreciate about Kaiser. Like, it's in their best interest to keep me healthy,
yeah.
right? Because like the
Because then you
longer that
cost.
like
Yep.
they let something go, the more expensive I'm going to
Mhm.
be for them. And so like
Yeah.
they're constantly sending me like they send me like, here's your appointment for your mammogram, right? Like, here's your appointment.
Oh,
They're always on top of all of the preventative care stuff, which is because like if I'm going to have breast cancer, like they want to have it, they want to know
very
early,
early.
right? Because I'll be cheaper to treat. And not like, so if they're, even if you're just looking at it from a money, like I'm cheaper for them, right? But it's
Mhm.
also going to be better for me. Like if we catch these
Yeah.
things early, like it's in everybody's best interest to do this preventative medicine stuff. But in a healthcare system where everything is like, people want to be able to pick their concierge doctor or whatever, but when the systems aren't all connected, it's so
Mhm.
easy for things to like slip through the holes and get missed, or all the doctors aren't on the same page and working together.
Right.
Anyway, this isn't a
Yeah.
healthcare podcast, but thank you guys for listening to my rant.
Well, I'm familiar with Kaiser, having lived in Hawaii. I think I've been on United Healthcare system, which it's been okay. Well, actually, this year I had to buy via Marketplace because I didn't qualify for healthcare through my science job because I'm below the 60% minimum, FTE. So I did my mammogram, I think that's the only thing I've done this year. And it's not, so that was covered. I didn't think I paid any like copay or anything. So that's good. I haven't seen a doctor this year and they haven't sent any reminders. And I do assume it's because it's kind of more disjointed. I'm probably due for a checkup, right? But yeah, it's definitely, well, it's better than not being insured. Although, I'm paying probably 600 a month or so ish. Who knows what will happen? I've heard these stories of like now with the new bill that, it's going to triple, for people that are on marketplace insurances, that are consultants, that are contractors, that are whoever, whatever your situation, or you just opt out of your company's insurance and you want to do the marketplace insurance. It's now going to be significantly more expensive, but who knows? It's a mess, right? Healthcare insurance. I won't say healthcare is a mess. I will say, yeah, insurance is a mess. So it does seem like Kaiser's consolidated plans do make sense from a logistics standpoint, and certainly from cost savings for them to keep people healthy instead of like, skip the pure annual checkup and blood work and, all that sort of stuff. The healthcare where I live is not great. I do travel about an hour and a half to another place to get healthcare
Yeah.
because I've heard horror stories of healthcare where I am located. And yeah, So anywho,
Yeah.
I had great
Yeah.
experience with healthcare in Hawaii too when I was a student there, and I was just a graduate student, and I thought they were all the doctors were good. I even saw, like the university had a great clinic. I saw a couple times for, I can't remember, strep throat or something, right? Pretty minor, but always covered, and that was great.
Yeah.
So
I feel
yeah.
like more and more it's going to be on all of us to do whatever like we know to do to keep ourselves as healthy as we can
Hmm.
be. And I mean, I feel like this has just been my like, I mean, okay, I'm 51 and the first time I ever saw an eye doctor was last week. So like that tells you like my how do you say like my impetus to go like to bring a doctor in when
Well,
I'm having a problem. Like I
right.
tend to not do
Yeah,
it
no,
until like
I
I
know.
absolutely have to. But also like I depend like I take personal responsibility for my health in most situations, right? So it's like I will try to solve my own problems. And actually this is what I told another friend of mine who was asking me about the eye thing and like how do I feel about it. And I was like, my main problem with this is that like I'm so used to taking personal responsibility for fixing my own problems. And I was like, this eye problem is not something that I'm capable of fixing. Like I am 100% dependent now on somebody with more expertise, more experience, more
Hmm.
knowledge, like somebody else is going to have to fix this for me. And in some health situations, like that is necessary, right? Like we
Hmm.
absolutely
Yeah.
have to have a professional fixing things for us. But there's a lot of little things that it's like you could fix for yourself with like diet and sleep and
Yeah.
slowing down and proper movement and like stuff like that. Like, so all basic things I take responsibility for. And then situations like this, I like them a lot less, but I am now dependent on
Well,
someone else to help me.
yeah. I mean, I'll say too, I've always had 20/20 vision. I think you all said your vision has always been very, very good, right? It's why you didn't
Hmm.
have to go to a eye doctor.
Yeah.
When I hit about 44, and I did pick up some readers, I think when I was like 42, like computer glasses, right? For the blue, to try to reduce the eye fatigue, which I don't know if they really even worked. It was like very minimal computer glasses. 44, I realized I was like, oh, like I used to read, and now I'm like, I can't. And so I went to the eye doctor last year and I got a little higher prescription readers because it was getting, I mean, I was having to hold my books like very far away, ingredient lists, forget it, right? And so the eye
Yeah.
doctor said about 45, that's a very common age for people to start to lose their vision up close, I guess. So I felt like, okay, but I still have better than 20/20 from far away. They were actually still impressed. They were like pretty impressed that I could see as well as I could from a distance. Unfortunately, my books are not held, halfway across the room to be able to see them. But anyways, yeah,
Yeah, I can't
it's
read
funny.
I can't read
Yeah,
anything close up or far away. Like so if
yeah,
mail
right.
comes, like I can't
You
read
can't.
a letter comes the or if I'm trying to read like instructions on like something that I'm trying to cook or bake or whatever, it's
Right. Nope.
like I depend on so much. I take a photograph of whatever it is that I want to read and then I go back to my photos and I zoom it all in.
Oh, man.
Like
But
that's the only
imagine
way I can
how.
read.
And so I assume like once you recovered from the surgery, how long is that? Like about a
I've heard it's really quick and
really
easy. Like
quick.
so
Okay.
so the issue is going to be like really I think the only drawback is that I can't swim for a month
Right.
afterward.
Okay.
And apparently that is because I asked about that because I tend it's also like after dermatology appointments I like don't swim for 2 weeks and like I'm back in the water after like 5 days. So, there's a part of me that's like, I'm not your normal patient, right? So like you can tell me that, but like what if even with goggles on? But I think what it is like they literally cut your eyeball open and they
Right.
pull out the lens and replace it with a new one. And apparently your eyes heal like reasonably quickly, but it's an infection risk
Right.
apparently if like I don't know
Yeah.
bacteria gets in there or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think that's the main issue about not, but I think, I mean, from what I've heard from people is that like you can read the next day and that
That's
it is
great.
like an amazing that like you open your eyes and you're like, oh, like this is so much better.
It's going to be
But
amazing,
like
right? Yeah.
one more funny story about this eye thing. So like when the lady had me do the test, the doctor, and she had me look in the thing to see if there was anything that a prescription glasses could do, right? So she was like, so if you've never had that test, you're like looking in this thing with one eyeball, and she's like, which one's better, three or four, and she's switching the lens, and I'm like, they're both the same, like, and so after she saw that like there was no prescription that was going to make my vision better, that's when she was like, okay, now we're going to dilate your eyes,
And then look.
and
Yeah.
and then we'll look in and see what's happening behind. And I've never had my eyes dilated before. And so she was like, you may or may not be able to drive home. Right. So like I had sunglasses, but like I didn't know. And so when they dilate your eyes, basically they just put a couple of drops in. They like sort of a couple of drops in each eyes. And honestly, I didn't feel anything really. It was fine. But I had to sit out in the waiting room for 20 minutes waiting for it to take effect before she was going to do anything with it. So while I'm sitting out there, I text my husband and my daughter both and was just like, hey, FYI, just stay near your phones because there's a possibility that I'm not going to be able to drive home and because he's dilating my eyes right now. And so if that's the case, then I may call you and ask you to like come pick me up. And I said, I'll let you know in about a half an hour. And so, they both wrote back and said, got it, we'll stand by. And it was so funny because like honestly, my vision was probably a little bit better.
Interesting.
I mean,
Interesting.
it was insane. I was driving home and I'm like, I think because Juana like laughed at me because when she saw how like big my pupils were, she goes, "Oh my gosh, mom, your pupils are huge," like when I got home. But I texted them, I'm like, I'm going to be fine driving home. And even while I was doing it, I'm like, I think I was actually safer driving home with dilated eyes.
Oh my
I'm like,
gosh.
I could see all the light a lot better.
Right.
I
My
shouldn't be
goodness.
driving. That's the
Yeah.
other answer. So they'll get me in quick, I think, because they don't want me to
Yeah.
kill anybody. Like that's the goal.
Well,
All right,
I hope it's good. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, let's switch
Thank you
topics.
for, yeah. Thank you for sharing though. And so, yeah, for those of you out there that you might be having something that you're like, this isn't quite right. Maybe going
Yeah,
and
if
getting
it
it
looks
checked
like
out.
you're looking through like a foggy lens, like that it could
Yeah.
legitimately be that you have cataracts. And by the way, you can get them at 50. And by the way, they can
Yeah.
significantly get worse every week. And
Yeah.
there's a reasonably easy fix for them, right? So
Right.
there's
That's
that.
good. And so wear your sunglasses when you're younger because there is some, I guess, some evidence you were saying that like the UV damage is what I think is there genetic component or is this
Yeah.
really from damage or is it
I
both probably?
it was because I asked her, I said, what are the things that like might have contributed? Because I just really want to know, like, if there's something that I'm doing that's like a lifestyle factor that I could change to improve my outcomes or whatever. And she said it could just be genetic. And I will say, when I look back, like, I do remember as a little kid having like massive sensitivity to brightness, like going from like
Okay.
indoor to
Yeah.
outdoor. Like, I really had a problem with like bright
Yeah.
light from a very young age. So it could be a genetic thing. It could be a UV thing. And then I think, what else did she say? She said, I think it was like corticosteroids. So like if you've ever been on like a major dose of like a prednisone kind of thing.
Okay.
And I was like, I was on prednisone once for like 5 days, like 10 years ago, like for some sort of chest infection or something. But like, that's not enough to like cause this kind of thing. But it would be more of like if you've had
Years,
like,
maybe.
yeah, or like, I think there are like some disease states where you might be on prednisone for like a really long time
Right.
to control
Right.
that. And so that is something that could over time contribute to, this
Gotcha.
eye situation.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't think that is it for me.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
anyway,
Well,
yeah, let's switch topics. So Mickey,
yeah,
did you watch the triathlon news last week and hear
I
that Kona, they changed their qualification
I did.
process? And I'm curious, I have my thoughts on that and I'm curious what yours are.
I didn't watch anything. I've actually been a little bit offline just for mental health. I don't know.
Good
you
for
know,
you.
um, so I did see the announcement. I got I still on the Ironman email list, so I did read through that. I don't know if they did. So I didn't listen in if they had a more formal announcement or video on it. But I mean, it's kind of what we had talked about, right? When we talked when they said they were going to go back to Kona, and we did our podcast about like going back to Kona, what does that mean, and age group slots. Like probably it's gonna if they go back to the way it's been allocated in the past, it's going to put competitive women at a disadvantage because we don't have the huge numbers of mid to backpack athletes that the men's uh, age groups do. A lot of the men's age groups do. So doing something of like, a proportionality or like, I think we even talked about doing some sort of like competitive equation, right? And so what they've come up with is sort of a version of what, you and I talked about, and some other people had thrown around ideas on how they would allocate based on basically like how competitive you are versus how many people show up in your age group on race day. So again, for those of you guys that may not be aware, if you're living under a rock, but if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably aware because you're
Yeah.
probably a triathlete. So, you will still, so if you win your age group, there will still be Kona slots for each age group winner. If that number one doesn't take it, then it will roll to number two. If number two doesn't take it, it'll roll to number three. If number three doesn't take it, then it goes back into the pool of slots available for
Yeah.
that race.
And like,
And
what
yeah,
do you think the chances are that these spots roll at all
no,
anymore? Like, I bet
no,
they don't, right? Like that whole idea of like, if nobody on in the top three takes it, then
no,
it goes back into the pool. And I'm thinking, I bet that
no.
like
Well,
maybe
no,
will happen once in all of this next like qualifying cycle. Like that is just not going to happen anymore. I bet first place takes it every time.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way they, and I don't remember the exact equation. If anyone's interested, you can go to the Ironman website. Probably it's on there. But essentially, they're going to normalize everything to the fastest age group time at Kona, and then it's going to be a ratio, basically, of how your age group compares to that fastest age group time. And then it will, but so while all the race times are compared to the Kona standard, they'll apply this ratio to your finishing time. Obviously, some races are going to be more challenging in a time, like they're going to have slower times. But because they have still allocated a certain number of slots to Kona for that race, based on where you fall in terms of how competitive you are, amongst all the racers in that race, it's still like you're still going to get a slot if you are within, you know, if your age group and you are, more competitive than, someone like, for example, men 35 to 39 usually has the largest age group, or men 40 to 44 has the largest age group. At this point, they will not be guaranteed more numbers of slots unless they collectively race faster than the other age group. So in my opinion, it's more equitable. I mean, it's going to reward the more competitive athletes, despite if you're, how old you are, what gender you are. I did see a little bit of backlash. I'm presuming it's probably from people in the large age groups, probably men. I saw a few comments saying they'll never qualify now. And I was like, oh, this tiniest violin is playing. Sorry. That was mean,
Yeah.
but whatever. What are your thoughts?
Well, when I saw it immediately, I was like, "Oh, this is so much better." Like just like my immediate gut reaction was like, "Good job. That is probably the very best they could have done." And I would say even among, and I know there's this whole thing about like women should have equal spots, and if you have 50 spots for men, have 50 spots for women, and da, 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 and I get that. But like, let's say even if they did that, like even if they made it completely even, I still think that this way of using the multiplier is
Hmm.
still probably the most fair than going like how many people are total in your age group, right? Because like I've done races where um like I remember a race at Honu and the reason I remember is it was literally like my best race ever. Like my
Hmm.
very best race at Honu. It was 35-39. I ended up getting fifth, but I was like I would have won my age. I would have won every single other age group. It just happened to be
Right.
that women 35 to 39 that
Oh,
year
yeah.
was just absolutely stacked. So like, well, I had my best day ever. I was super stoked. I was really happy with my performance, but I was like, oh my God, I landed fifth, but I would have won any other age group
Hmm.
that in the race. And so like, if you're looking at who then would qualify for Kona, like based off that, and it's like, it would have been so unfair to be like, if I was in any other age group, I would have won. But like, you don't get a Kona spot because your age group happened to be more, like there were more faster
Right.
people in it. But like, what this does is it takes like the most competitive um, athletes regardless of what age group you are, right? So if you're 60 to 64 and like there happens to be like, and like these are situations that can come up. So you have an ex-pro, right? So like, I
Right.
don't know, Julie Moss comes and
Right.
she's, like used to be whatever, right? Like your Heather Fuhr and decides to like jump back into triathlon and like she's going to come and she's going to beat me like no matter what. But if I get like second to her and I was only like a couple minutes back and like that's a great scenario, like that still may be good enough then to qualify because like my age group just happened to be competitive and it's not my like, it's not under my control, these ex-pros that come back and start racing as age groupers or whatever. So yeah, I mean, every bit about that seems like the absolute best that they could do. And what it does is it eliminates, like, there are times where you look at like an 18 to 24 age group, where there are times where there are some really fast young girls who are very talented, like in that young age group. But there are also times where, like, those women, they don't have enough time yet to develop to be like competitive in a big picture scene, right? So
Hmm.
like, if they're still going to be 20 minutes off or 30 minutes off of a competitive time from an older age group, but if you just allocate it based on how many spots go to that age group, then maybe like the lesser competitive athlete gets the spot just because like that age group hasn't had a chance to develop yet. And then again, you have your women who are 35, 39 who are like
We're like
all
at the
really on
top of
top
their
of it.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm like, in my mind, I just feel like it's better. It's better for everyone all around. It's more fair, and it does eliminate, like, so to your point, like whoever said like, oh, well, like luck is not like, I mean, my whole thing is like, it's not luck. Like, literally, I named
Right.
my business, it's not luck. And so to qualify for the world championships because you got lucky, because like you happened to be in a big age group where a lot of people entered, but it wasn't as fast as like another one of the age groups, and it's like. I,
I,
I'm sorry, like, it's the world championship, so we're going to take like the most competitive people. So like, in my
yeah.
mind, I think that it is a great it's like, I'm I'm very happy to criticize Iron Man when I think that they've done something that doesn't make any sense, and I think that this is the best thing that they could have done.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I in particular like that they are going to keep these, they're going to reassess every Kona, right? And so if age groups gets faster, the ratio would change. And as we're going to assume, right, that the men and women's age groups will improve year to year. But if Kona has a slow year because of winds or swell or whatever, it will also renormalize to maybe a bit slower year. So I think it will. I like statistics that are not stagnant, that are looking
Hmm.
at the field and evolving with the athletes that are participating. So I think, yeah, again, I agree. I've been pretty negative on Ironman for a long time now from some of their business decisions not benefiting actually doing the best thing for the athletes. And I think, yeah, this was a good decision on their part, and I fully support them. It almost makes me want to consider racing
Yeah,
again,
like,
but TBD.
yeah,
TBD. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah. The other thing that, I mean, you can imagine how this plays out too, like on race day. So like, no longer is it enough to be like, I'm second in my age group and I'm 10 minutes ahead of third, so I can just ease up now and
Right. Now
jog
you
into
gotta
the finish, because it's literally like every second counts, because you're not just competing against the people in your age group, you're competing with everyone in the race.
right.
Right. So
And
like,
that's
there's
real. Yeah.
no jogging it in for the last mile. Like, if you're trying to get the fastest time you can to like rank as high as you can after your time's been multiplied by whatever multiplier it is, then like, yeah, like there's no just like doing whatever you have to do just to like get second or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, and
Like, yeah,
I did see briefly that someone said, well, now it's going to be impossible to know what time will qualify. And it's like, but
yeah, no, you don't know.
this is racing, people. Like,
Yeah.
pull up, pull up your panties and get going. Like, this is,
Yeah.
yeah,
You know
again,
what
like,
though? Like, where it can really screw people is, so say like, cause again, and I'll go back to Honu just cause like that's a race that I know really well. But like, the conditions can change so much, right?
mm,
Like, over the course of like 45 minutes.
right.
So if you start more in the back, and you had to start in the back because your age group started in the back, and it's windier on the bike, it's hotter on the run versus the people
It's
who
true.
started and finished earlier than you. So like, just say that you're like 60 to 64 at Honu, right? And so like, of course your time's going to be like, you should not start with the 30-year-olds up front, because like you're going to get
Right.
pummeled in the swim. You know what I mean? Like, it's
It's
not a good
true.
scenario. But if you start 45 minutes later, which happens when
Yeah.
they have the rolling start the way they do, now it's like your conditions on the bike are going to be harder. The
Yeah,
conditions
that's
on the
true.
run are going to be hotter. And in that scenario, if you're comparing your time as the multiplier against people who started 45 minutes before you and therefore had different conditions, that's the only
Mm,
way that I see like, okay,
could
like
be an
that's where
issue.
it's
Yeah.
potentially unfair, is like,
Yeah.
for the slower
Yeah.
age groups who are out there longer. But
Yeah.
I mean, they do get a different multiplier then too. So there's
Right.
that.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. That's something that we'll potentially we'll see play out maybe, and
Yeah, it'll be
I
interesting too,
yeah,
like at the awards ceremonies, like how they do it. If everybody, because like you won't necessarily know.
right?
I mean, so I remember too. So like again, this I'm going to date myself here, but like back in the day, like in the '90s, when you went and did an Ironman or any race that was a qualifier, it was so much better. Like the actual like announcement of the name, the going up, the
Hmm.
accepting your spot, like it was a ceremony, and it
Yeah,
was really really cool. And I remember when they switched it over to be like, yeah, if you won your age group, just go to that table and give them your credit card or whatever, right? Like you didn't get your name called at the awards ceremony, and like I remember sitting with like friends. So this wasn't like for me, but like for my friends who were trying to qualify for Kona, like in 1998 or like whatever the year was. And you're sitting there at the award ceremony and you literally are like, maybe, like, I don't know. And so everybody's there waiting, and like whoever's the, race director or the announcer, like
hmm,
they're saying the names, and like, and our next qualifier is, and then
I
they
can
say the
imagine. Yeah,
name, right? And then it's like, is this
yeah,
person gonna take it, and it's like if it's quiet and you're like, oh, maybe they're not here and they're not here, and then they're like, okay, moving on, like the next name. And then when they call the name, if that person stands up, first of all their friends and family who are with them are
right,
screaming and cheering like mad, and then everybody else is also like really excited
right.
for
Yeah,
them, and like the cheering and it's like I have a lot of nostalgia for like that process, because
yeah.
it was so much better than how they're doing it now. So if they go back to that kind of process, because like no one's going to know, so everybody has to show up to the award ceremony as they do this roll down, and then you
Yeah.
just like have to wait because you literally don't know. I hope they do that instead of like just do the printout and put your name up, and then
I
you know
think
what I mean? Like if your
one.
name is
Yeah,
above this line, then go get your spot.
I think I might be misquoting, but I think I remember in the announcement email they did say now you're going to have to go to the awards and wait to see how this will all roll out
Which
essentially.
is just like
So
it adds an element of
yeah,
excitement to the
yeah. If
race,
you
which
want
is
to,
like, and it adds an element of like mystique to qualifying that has maybe
yeah,
been missing since
lost a
like
little
they've
bit.
just
Yeah,
done I really just didn't like the whole thing where it's like, look at your name on the list and go to the table and give them your credit card. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. It just felt
I
so sleazy.
I did not, so I haven't raced since 2019. So I have had athletes qualify in the years since, but I haven't been at a roll down in a long time, and so I didn't know they actually were. That's how they did it, which is yeah, not as fun. Even if you are thinking like so my best race I was also fifth, right? I think in like I had the third fastest marathon time out of all women. Think I didn't look. I don't remember if I had won other age groups, but I know that the woman that won, she had the fastest marathon time out of all women. I had the third, and I think the second was like in the 25 to 29, right? We had a very fast age group. I think our finishing times were all very, very close within like 20 minutes. And of course, we had two slots, and this is 35 to 39. And so, yeah, I mean, and it was Louisville, so it was very early in the season. No one rolled; it wasn't going to roll. However, right, and I knew that going in, that it wasn't going to roll down to me unless there was like, I mean, I don't know. But it's still fun to go, even if you know you're not going to go, because it is celebratory, right? I mean, to celebrate for folks, and even if you were hopeful, but you didn't happen, it's still reason to show up and cheer your
Hmm.
competitors, and I think it's
Yeah.
a good community building, So
Yeah.
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 And I feel like the other thing is I've had athletes, all these memories are coming up now. I've had athletes miss the spot by like one spot, right? So like, and
Hmm.
this is a guy like 40 to 44 kind of male, where there are a lot of spots in this age group, but like if he landed eighth and there's seven spots, and you're like, oh, is he going to get it right? And all seven take it. And it's like, there was a race that like he literally missed it by, I mean, it was something like 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Like it was really, really close on the line that he missed it by. And you're like, with this new qualification system,
He
like
might have,
maybe
yeah,
that wouldn't have happened, right? So like even if he
right.
did get eighth, but it was such a tight, like they were all about the same, then they all get to go, which makes a
Yeah,
lot more sense too than like, oh,
right,
like I feel like the chances of somebody missing a spot by 5 seconds are way
right,
slimmer now,
right.
right? Like you're
I
not going to
agree.
miss it
I
by five
agree.
seconds. You're going to miss it by 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, good job, Iron Man.
yeah.
Nikki and Michelle
And that was
approve.
from us.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. So Nikki,
yeah,
you're wearing a tank top.
I am. It is
If you're
hot
watching
here.
on YouTube right now, you guys,
Yeah.
Nikki is wearing a tank top.
And I mean, I'm a Colorado girl. One, the sun is always intense here, but in the summers, this house gets it's hot here. I mean, I think the high might, and I know this is not going to be comparable to Hawaii, but I'm at 8,700 feet and the sun is intense, right? And when it's 90 here, it feels just brutal. Your skin is just burning. And I know it feels like that in Hawaii too, because
Do you not
you're
have air conditioning?
no, there's no air conditioning.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
have a fan. And so my protocol in the summer is basically to get up at like 3 in the morning, open up all the doors, the sliding,
Hmm.
and I don't leave them open all night. And you might ask why. It's because bear. Like I'm not going to have a bear walk into my house. But I do get up very early to open up everything, open the windows, open the sliding glass doors to the screen doors to get airflow. And then I basically try to shut it down around 2:30 in the afternoon and try to keep the cool air in because yeah, I've got skylights and windows behind me that we bake. So I've got my younger dog upstairs with me, but my big boy Braggy is down in the back bedroom where I do have a little swamp cooler going, and that's where he basically lives. He lives there on the bathroom tile floor. So
Yeah,
very warm. Very warm. Not as warm as Hawaii though. I mean, having lived in Hawaii, Hawaii can get brutally, brutally hot.
yeah. It's never 90 though. It's the humidity makes like 88 feel horrific,
Yeah,
right? You know
yeah,
what I mean? So
yeah,
it's not necessarily the number, but the humidity on it makes it feel like suffocating in
yeah,
a, but we
yeah.
don't have air conditioning either. And for the most part,
Right.
it's fine. Like it's we open the windows and like let the air come in, um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I
then
remember.
close the
Yeah,
windows.
I remember when I lived in Hawaii too. Yeah, none of the rentals had air conditioning, and then the air conditioning in the um, I'm blanking on the name of the building, the HIGP, where SOEST and on campus, it was frigid. Like I don't know
Yeah,
what they did, but like I swear to it was like 40 degrees in there. I mean, not really. I think it was the differential between like how hot
yeah,
it was outside and the air conditioning on that in that building. But I remember like bringing sweaters to work because it was like you're sweltering getting to work, right? And then you're dripping sweat, and then you come in and you freeze.
yeah,
So yeah, that was yeah. But this time of year, right? And I have a lot of athletes along the Front Range. I'm sure you've got athletes all over. In Colorado, especially, it kind of goes from like I really think anymore like winter, we get a little brief spring, and then it's like 100 degrees in Denver, right? I mean, the Front Range can get really hot very, very quickly. And so heat, right? Like, how do we train in the heat? Are we trying to do adaptations? What are the effects of heat training? So I've had quite a few not conversations, but Training Peaks uploads of like, you know, super hot, right? Melted, like had to walk it in, delayed. A big one is like, I didn't anticipate how hot it was going to be. I slept in and delayed my run, and that was a mistake. And I'm like, yeah, that's a mistake. And not just in
hmm,
Colorado, but on the East Coast too. I've got, Boston area athletes, Nantucket, and it seems to have transitioned from, fairly mild conditions, even like, fog, 50 to like brutally hot. So it seems to be the change we're going through. I don't know. I seem to remember more spring back in the day, when we were kids, but I don't think we have that anymore. So yeah.
yeah,
So we thought we'd touch on heat training or training in the heat, which I would say there's almost two different things. Like there is
yeah,
heat training for adaptations to race in the heat. There's been some scientific evidence to use heat training to adapt better to altitude. It's not as good as if you go to altitude and train in altitude, but there are some similar physiological adaptations that it can occur that will make it easier for you to transition to altitude. Say if you're racing at altitude or you're doing a training camp at altitude, doing some heat adaptation training before then can be beneficial. And there is some evidence of even using heat adaptations to race better in cooler temperatures. But from my understanding, the scientific evidence is not as clear in terms of do these athletes actually perform better then? Because there's a cost to heat adaptation and training in the heat. So yeah,
yeah. I was always
yeah,
really skeptical of that too, because like
yeah.
I living and training in Hawaii for the last 20 years, and then even before that, I was in Arizona where it was hot like a lot of the time. Um, I always thought that, I mean, it's a nice thought to be like, oh, I'm going to go race like in Coeur d'Alene, right? Where it's like not going to be like, the temperatures are easier, California or whatever. And like, while it is better, I don't know that it's better than it would have been had I been training in more ideal conditions.
Hmm.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, I don't
yeah,
think that, and maybe it was my expectations just weren't met, or if I thought that like, oh, I'm going to have some sort of advantage because I always train in the heat. And so now I'm going to go race in this colder climate. And on the occasion that I've done that, I've never been like, oh, look at this magic performance that came out of nowhere
Right.
that I didn't expect. Like it's never
It's
happened that way.
never
And most of the time
transparent.
it's the opposite. Like I don't even know how to manage when like my fingers are freezing and I can't,
Right.
I'm so
Too
much colder
much.
than everyone else. Like, and
Too much.
so yeah, I'm not sure that, at least anecdotally for me, I don't know that there's, I think it's almost more detrimental when you're training in heat all the time because you're limited. Like you have this ceiling of how hard. So like, let's
Hmm.
just go back. Like
Yeah.
heat does not help performance. Like heat inhibits performance in any sort of endurance sport. Pick one. It doesn't matter. You're going to have to go slower when it's hotter, period, across the board. So if you're always training in heat like we are, you're always limited to some degree about like how high intensity or how long you can hold your threshold. So your threshold is going to be lower than it would be in 60 degrees. And so if you're doing a 20-minute threshold session or 2 times 20 minutes threshold or whatever, like if you're doing that in California and it's 60 degrees, you can go faster for the same amount of like energy or physiological effort than you can here. And so while like the threshold just is what it is, I mean, it's the muscular and mechanical adaptations that you can get if you're training in better conditions where it's not
Hmm.
as hot and you're
Hmm.
capable of going faster, holding faster or higher power or like whatever it is, then it's, you can see how the adaptations then would be better if you were training in cooler conditions more often. Right.
Hmm.
But then
Hmm.
if you're not in heat all the time and you can sort of get used to heat, then like, and let yourself slow down a little, the second it cools off, like your paces are back to where they would have been like without the heat.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, heat, we have yet to scientifically come up with some sort of technology that would allow athletes to actually perform better in the heat, right? I mean, there's a lot of fancy stuff on the market to try to cool yourself down, which I see how I have whole protocols for my athletes, and when we know they're going to go into a hot race and like how to cool yourself down. But the fact is that it's harder on the body, to race in the heat, and even if you're well heat adapted, right, and you live in a hot climate, I mean, it's still going to slow you down. And why is that? It's the mechanics, it's the physiology of humans, right? Like how we have to get rid of, excess heat. And if we're also working hard that builds more heat, right? So your internal core temperature can only really function right up to a certain degree, and then your body starts to shut down. It's a preservation
Mm-hmm.
mechanism. So yeah, what happens, right? And the common complaints that I get, and I'm sure you get the same, is like, oh, my heart rate was through the roof, my paces or my paces were super slow, or I had to walk, or I had to, blah blah blah. And well, yeah, what do you tell your athletes? I'll put it to you, like, when you get an upload like that or a post activity comment about, people complaining, right, about the paces, the heart rates, what do you say to them?
Well, so my situation is probably going to be a little bit different than yours because, like, here we deal with, I'd say, but anyway, I'm thinking about my local athletes right now anyway. So it's reasonably warm year round. So it's
Right.
almost
Okay.
never
Yeah.
the case that we do a session and we're like, I was cold, right? Like that
Right.
never happens here.
Right.
So ours it's like varying degrees of like how hot is hot,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
I would say most of the time I don't get a lot of, I wouldn't, my athletes rarely complain
Yeah,
about
because
being
they're
hot. Where they do complain about hot is in the water. Like, so this time of year, a lot of times, like our pools, if the wind slows down, our pools get really hot. And so
oof,
like you may
yeah,
be
that's
swimming in
hard.
like 86 degrees kind of thing. And like we can talk about that
Oh my
separately and
God.
it's horrific. Um,
Yeah.
and so I would say the only real like complaints, like the ones that are like, I'm complaining about it is when the water is hot. And personally, I complain about that too. So like,
Yeah, I would.
totally get it.
That sounds
Yeah,
horrible. I would
it's
vomit. Like,
horrible.
no
It's
way.
it's so bad. And I'll share with you later about like what I've learned because I coach masters and like sometimes that pool in Kailua like it's shallow and when it's
Oof.
sunny and no wind, it's so hot in there and like they die. So I'll tell you how I like modify workouts for them in those conditions. But in the meantime, to answer this first question, I would say they don't complain, but they will make note and they'll say like, this was really hot. And what's interesting for me is that when you have like a whole cohort of athletes that are in the same place, right? Like, whereas a lot of them are here in Hawaii, like on the hottest day, because there are some days that are just worse than others, and it's just everything is incrementally, right? So like most of my athletes are absolutely fine in like 84 degrees and sun, like
Hmm.
they got it, like they're very used to that, and it just is what it is. There's no complaints. But then there'll be a day where it's like 88 and humid or something like that, where it's just like the shift is like
That's,
just
yeah,
enough to throw everybody over the top. And I'll get note after note after note, right? Like long run
from
Sunday.
everybody.
And they're all like, my heart rate was really high, or like I did well for the first 30 minutes and then I died, or like I didn't bring enough fluid with me, or like, and I would say they're all like pretty used to it. But generally speaking, I'll know. And I've even had this happen when I've been like on vacation or on the mainland or something, and I'm checking back with notes like from the athletes in Hawaii. And when every one of them across the board is saying the same thing, you know, like I'll actually tell them, I'll write back and be like, you're the fourth note that I've read today
Hmm.
complaining about how hot it was. So like just to help them be like, you're not imagining this.
Right.
It's very real. And so I think there's a couple of things about like how to approach it. A, I mean, the most obvious thing is watch your heart rate,
Hmm.
plan for hydration, plan your run if you can, or your training if you can, around the heat the best you can, like get it done early. But
Hmm.
the reality is, if you're training for an Ironman or you're out, like, I mean, it's just like,
Right.
I mean, like by 8 a.m., it's really, really hot. So like, it's unrealistic to be like, oh, you can avoid the heat. So I rarely tell them to like try to avoid the heat. Although here, the way we can do it is we can actually, it gets cooler in the afternoon. So like if you wait until 5 p.m., like 5 p.m. is a way better time to train than 10 a.m. just
Hmm.
because like the angle of the sun and it goes down behind the mountains or there's clouds or whatever. But yeah, so like basically I just let them know that it's fine. Like you're not imagining it. You have to go slower. Like when that's the case, let go of what the pace is. I think most of them are pretty well trained to like not really, they won't complain about it, but they'll make a note of it. And then I just like validate that for them and be like, yep, you're right. Like you weren't imagining that. And it was really smart for you to like not try to push through on that. I would say like that said, when we talk about key workouts, so like while sometimes, how do I say this? Like there's different ways to approach training in heat to get the most
Hmm.
benefit from the session. And so I want to be really careful about how we even frame this, because there is a, you know, suck it up and get used to it and don't complain, blah, blah, right? Like there's that mindset. And then there's the reality and like the science and physiology, like it's a legit stressor on your
Hmm.
system. But
Hmm.
like if you go into a session already deciding that I'm going to fail this session because it's so hot, then like, you know, that may or may not be like,
Yeah, the
what I don't
mindset
want to do is
around
be
it.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
like,
Right.
cause we talk about this all the time. Like mindset is super important. And if you've decided that you failed a workout before you even started the workout, then like, that's a giant fail. Like, right. Like you're going to fail it. But if you also go in with this like bullheaded mindset that like, no matter what, like I'm going to do my thing, the chances of you like throwing yourself over the cliff edge in trying to be a hero on that are not right either. So I feel like it's really possible, maybe more so with heat than any other variable. It's possible to overdo it on either end of this mental
Absolutely.
spectrum as far as like how you're approaching it. And so like in my mind, it's like the way that we approach this has to be through a lens of reality.
Hmm.
So like I'm being realistic here. And so I'm not giving myself an out and an excuse to just give up and fail from the beginning, but I'm also like not going to try to be this hero and prove to myself and
Hmm.
everybody else that like I am better than you because like I can suffer in the heat better than you can. And so I feel like the best way to do this is to adjust your expectations going in, like be very realistic about what are the obstacles that I'm facing now, understanding the physiological demands of the heat that you're being exposed to, setting yourself up the best you can for like that particular session, like whatever it is, and in the conditions you're about to do it, and then like adjust your expectations of what it means to like win the workout.
Hmm.
So like winning the workout, it could be like you ran a minute per mile slower than you would have on another day, and that could still very much be a win. And so, yeah, like letting go of the numbers way more than we would in
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
scenario. And then just knowing that it's really easy to overdo it on either end of the spectrum, right? Like, because what you don't want to be like, oh, it's too hot, so I just am not going to go train. Like, that's not the answer, right? But also, like, I'm going to be a hero and train in 100 degrees every day. Like, I think the long term consequences of that, having been in Hawaii for 21 years now, the long term consequences of overexposing yourself to excessive heat and forcing it on yourself, I think can have detrimental effects over the long term. And that may not be something that you experience in one season or even two, but 10 years down the line, if you're still
Yeah.
here,
Well,
you may be having detrimental effects that other athletes don't have.
and I know through some, I don't know how, what to call colleagues, right, or other fellow athletes that have suffered several bouts of severe heat illness, and they no longer can race at all in the heat. I mean, their
Yeah.
bodies shut down. And so that's,
Yeah.
thinking you're a hero, right? And I'm going to suffer through and do this epic workout, or even continue in a race when things are going sideways. Like, ask yourself, is this worth long-term potentially health issues and or my capability to ever really race? And even, I mean, some situations it might even be like a moderate temperature, like it's not even extreme heat anymore, but it's any heat and they cannot do it.
Well, yeah, and I think it gets
So
worse. So, like, we watch like
yeah.
an Emma Pallant Brown, or say, like if you follow the professional end of our sport, Emma Pallant Brown is an incredible athlete. I'm specific with bike and run. She's struggles some on the swim, but like she is an incredible runner. And like when she does hot races, her body, like I think at one point she's a professional athlete, right? So she has this mindset of like will push through.
Hmm.
And when she did that on like some race earlier, and then what happens is our brains then, like if and when we push past this protective mechanism that our brain has, it says like your brain's whole job is to try to keep you alive, right? Like it's
Right.
looking at like what are all the external stressors and factors here that like could cause harm. It'll give warning signs that we're capable of overcoming if we decide we
Hmm.
want to, right? You're capable of doing that. And if you do that to an extreme degree, there may be a time where your brain goes, "Oh, we got to lower that set point," right? Because like if she's going to
She
will
went.
herself
Yeah.
past it, right? And so if my true set point is like the true, like this is when you're going to fry yourself, then it's like, well, I got to set the set point here lower to cut her off earlier. And so like your body will just go into collapse. And
Hmm.
so it can happen that earlier and earlier, or at more and more moderate temperatures, you become physically incapable of
Hmm.
continuing on. Like Sarah True had some issues with
Yeah.
that, right? Like when she's like collapsed in Ironman and then like kept going. And so I just want to use that as a warning to
Hmm.
like, don't think in this scenario that being a hero is the way.
Yeah.
It's not.
No, it's not. Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I think so. Yeah, my advice to athletes is one, once we move into the hot part of the season, and I have athletes, so Colorado, very cold to very hot, right, for most
Hmm.
parts of the state, and in the East Coast, and I've got some athletes along the Gulf Coast, where it's more warm, but then brutally hot as well in the summer. We're not adapted as well as we can be, especially early in the summer season or the late spring. And the reality is it's going to slow us down, right? Even if we come well adapted, like you're still going to run slower. And it's predominantly on the run because on the bike, you're getting more cooling from wind, right? Now, if you go set your trainer up outside in the heat and you're not having any wind, then your effects will be very similar to, running in the heat. And people have done that. I mean, I have friends that have done that. They've set their bike trainers up in the bathroom, turn on a heater and turn on the shower, and that they're prepping for the hot race that they have, either
Hmm.
Kona or Cozumel or whatever. However, we don't, so there's a couple things, right? We work into the heat, and the heat, the heat happens, right? We don't have any control, but like how our mindset again of like how we're going to approach the session. Taking out intensity is the first thing. Let the heat be the intensity. So keep it easy, whether it's by, and I totally agree, pace work out, right? On the bike, depending on how hot it is, maybe the power goes out the window too, and you're just focusing on easy, keeping the heart rate controlled as much as possible and fueling and hydrating, but letting the heat be the intensity of the session. When I do anticipate athletes are going to be training in the heat, sometimes I'll sprinkle in a little bit of work, but it's really work just to accommodate the heat if we're going by heart rate. So I'll say, use your MAF heart rate, and then I'm going to have you do 3 by 5 minutes tempo at a MAF plus 10. So when you're training in 90 to 100 degree temperature, it should be very easy to get your heart rate up to MAF plus 10 to 15, unless you're carrying significant fatigue, which most of my athletes, well, I have maybe a couple that are right now, and I wouldn't give this to them. But for my athletes that are short course focused, that aren't really training that much, like their heart rate can be very responsive, especially in the heat. And so I kind of trick it, right? And I actually build the session almost so they are more successful because it's easy to get your heart rate up and they're going to feel like they can run a little more naturally at those little bit higher heart rates. Now, nothing crazy. And it also depends, and every session is like the caveat is, of course, if you feel dizzy, stop, right? And long, so yeah, if you feel dizzy, stop, right? That's a sign of like something's off. Heat exhaustion is a real thing. And so depending on how long the session is, again, if I know the athlete's training in an extreme heat, I'm usually going to shorten the session up as well, because it just isn't necessary to be out there. I mean, there are times that it might be, right, Ironman training, right? You just got to get the volume in. However, I've also taken the approach for some like I'm not currently coaching this athlete now, but she was training for a later summer Ironman, and she was in the Houston area. And training in Houston in the summer is
Yeah, brutal. Yeah,
brutal. And so what we
yeah.
do is we'd go out, ride in the morning, where like 2 or 3 hours in the morning, like almost before sunup. And then she'd come back in and get on the trainer, and she'd do another 2 or 3 hours in the trainer. And that's fine, right? Like that
That's a great
overall,
way to manage. Yeah.
yeah, it's like we want an athlete to build up volume. And if the heat is going to reduce your quality and your volume, then it's detrimental to your overall training. You're going to get way more fitness by doing appropriate training than any kind of hero workouts in the heat. So, yeah, taking out intensity, managing your mindset, knowing that you're still building fitness, even if you're going slower, because the physiology, right, is still the same. There might be neuromuscular lapses or like degradation of a neuromuscular firing if you're missing out on a lot of speed work because it's just too hot to do the speed work. So then you
Hmm.
would want to take it to the treadmill, right? And I have suggested this to athletes. And interestingly, people are much less willing to use the treadmill as a tool when it's hot versus when it's cold, even though most often they can run better quality. Now cold within a range, right? Like if it's like well below zero,
Yeah.
then you don't want to be doing quality. But commonly you'll see on the socials, right? Like it's like 30 degrees and people are like, oh, I'm on the treadmill to do my speed set. And I'm like, that's actually fine. Bundle up, go on. But trying to do speed work when it's 100,
Yeah.
that's, and I had a comment saying, oh, I deserve a medal for this workout. It was 101. I couldn't comment because all I wanted to say was like a Darwin medal. I mean, use the treadmill. There's, there's literally like, why would you do this? Yeah, again, a hero workout that was not necessary and probably did more damage, honestly, than, because they had 2 or 3 days. They had informal sessions that they do with a group, always intensity. And then I had a little bit of a tempo run. They went out and did it when it was 100 degrees. Saturday, shit day, right? Like and I had suggested like, well, why you could have done this inside when it's cooler on or you could wait till the sun goes down and then do it. And, those are the better choices when you're trying to get quality work in and it's literally 90 to 100 degrees.
Yeah.
However, I've also seen when it gets cooler in Colorado or on the East Coast or wherever you are, it might not in Hawaii, the paces come back down, right? When it gets
Yeah.
cooler,
Yeah.
because you're still building fitness, right? Like you're doing the work, ignore the pace, get out and do what you need to do. And when the temperatures get cooler, the paces come back almost across the board. So
Hmm.
it's part of the process of ebbing and flowing with your conditions that you live in, right? When it might be very cold, very hot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see how people would think it's an interesting point you make about treadmill when it's hot versus when it's cold, and like what are your reasons for staying in. And so like if especially when road conditions are bad, like when I have athletes
Yeah.
that live on the mainland and
Yeah.
it's snowing or it's icy
Yeah.
outside, and so they'll choose
Absolutely.
the treadmill because they're like, well, it's ice, there's patches of ice outside, and
Yeah.
like I don't want
True.
to fall. And like that is a super legit reason to use a treadmill. Here I've had, and so maybe it's an easier mindset for me because it was drilled into me pretty early from a coach that I really respect who understood training in the heat. And she was like, when you have a key workout like this, your best bet is to do it on a treadmill. And
Hmm.
she was talking to like me specifically, like, you live in Hawaii. This is a hard set. I want you to hit the paces. You're better off doing it on the treadmill, even if
Hmm.
you could do it outside. So, like, let's just say that, like, I have a pace run that I'm trying to do, and I want to nail it for the physiological benefits that come with hitting like that specific pace. I might be able to do it outside, but the strain is going to be higher if I do versus if I
Hmm.
take it inside.
Yep.
I can still hit those paces with less strain, which means that recovery is then quicker, which means that tomorrow I can go out and train again. And so when I look at my choice to do a key run session on a treadmill, because if I did it outside, it would be too demanding,
Hmm.
then you can look there will be some athletes that will have egos that will say that means I'm a wimp or whatever because like I
Yeah.
wimped out and I tried to make it easier for myself. But if you're smart about it and you're like, no, I'm taking the whole big picture into consideration here, and I'm not looking at just this one workout, I'm looking at the week in total. And so what I'm not going to do is any one workout that's going to put me in a hole that's going to take
Yep.
me a couple of days to recover and compromise my training the next day. So commonly, like what I'll tell athletes, and this goes for like bike trainer too, depending, like, so some have an air conditioned room for a bike trainer, some don't.
Hmm.
So bike trainer workouts can be like really, really hot here, but like the very bare minimum, you need a giant like industrial size
And
fan.
yeah.
But to do key workouts in a way that you can get the work done for the least cost possible is the most professional way to get that work done, right? Like get
Absolutely.
over the
Yeah.
ego part and like do the key work on a treadmill in air conditioning so that you get the stimulus. And then, so like generally speaking, like in my ideal world for an athlete, right? This is ideal case scenario here in Hawaii. It's hot all the time. It's summertime right now. So I would say do all of your easy sessions outside, hydrate the best you can, electrolytes, weigh yourself before and after sessions, just get a
Hmm.
feel for like how much weight are you losing. If you're losing more than like 5 pounds, you're definitely under hydrating. You need to be hydrating more. That Omius headband thing that like some of the
Oh yeah.
pros wear, I have one of those. Those actually work. Like it's super legit. Like it's not gimmicky. Like it is
Good to know. Good to
it
know.
it
Yeah.
like increases surface area. It's some sort of like clay mineral
Hmm.
on it. And as long as it's wet and there's wind hitting it, what it does is it aids your body's ability to offset heat, right? So like if your body's trying to get rid of sweat or get rid of heat, and that's what sweat is about. When you put that headband on, it effectively increases the surface area that your body can like let go of heat. And so it feels cooler. It is better with that band. I wore the headband and I'm like, this legitimately works. I actually spoke with the owner of the company asking him how, and he communicated with me and told me all about it. And I'm like, this is a brilliant product. Like, good job. So highly recommend those. But anyway, so easy workouts outside and manage yourself really well for that. And then for your key workouts, do them inside so
Hmm.
that you can get the most like mechanical benefit from the session and it doesn't take so much out of you that you can't train again the next day. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's sort of your best of both worlds scenario. Because if you did all of your training inside in air conditioning and never exposed yourself to heat, then like on race day, you're not going to be acclimated and that's a problem. But if you did your easy workouts outside and then on those easy workouts, like, look, let the pace go. We do not care how slow it is when it's hot out. Just like get the heart rate right and let the pace be whatever it is, it's fine. Um, and then do your key workouts when it's going to be less detrimental on you or when there's less of a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. When I have athletes that either specifically mention or have a focus of I want to become more heat acclimated, right? Like a lot of times we're just kind of rolling, right? As the temperatures soar in the summer, we're slowly adapting. And I say the same thing. And some athletes take me up on it. I mean, I have a lot of athletes that will get up before the sunrise to get their sessions in and try to, beat the heat and do it and manage it, right? In a professional way. I have other athletes that basically just do what they want to do and train when it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and 100 degrees and I you can lead a horse to water, right? But for athletes that have a hot race or that want to become more adapted, so the scientific research is basically says it takes about 14 days of effort, right? And so we build the sessions into, still do a little bit of quality if we're training for like a triathlon, like we'll do some trainer workouts and the air conditioning, and then we'll specifically go and run, in the near the heat of the day whenever it works for their work schedule. But yeah, same thing, easy. And so we keep it as easy, short, those sessions so that it doesn't take as much out of them. And doing that over about 14 days, it doesn't mean that you are going to be as fast as you were in 60-degree temperatures, right? Or 70, whatever your optimal, probably varies per athlete. My optimal is probably 40 degrees, but you will maybe slow down less, right? The heat will feel less impactful. Potentially your heart rate will rise less, right? You may still not run or ride the same, especially run, I'll just say run, because sometimes, again, with the bike, you're getting wind. It's just less impactful on the body to ride at your prescribed paces, heart rate, power, whatever. With the run, you're just getting less of that because you're moving slower. And so you're probably still not going to run the same efforts, paces if the temperature was, 60 instead of 90. But again, it's an adaptability. However, the thing about heat training and heat adaptation is once you stop doing it, you actually lose those adaptations fairly quickly. And I can't remember the exact number. I want to say it's like it's like a lot. Like even 2 or 3 days, you're down like 30%, right? In whatever metric you're measuring, right? Whether it's heart rate or blood volume or a decrease back in blood lactate, VO2 max, whatever it is, like you're losing it fairly quickly. And so trying to plan when you're going to do heat adaptation and when you're going to go to your race. Like if you're going to get to your race like 2 days in advance, or are you going to get to your race a week in advance? And like, so there's a bunch of different protocols for like when you want to do heat adaptation work. And then of course there's scientists and coaches that have come up with like, okay, we do the block of heat adaptation. It's about 14 days that it takes to get more adapted. And then if you move back into your normal training or you move into taper, so some it's like 6 weeks out, right? And then you go back into a normal 2 or 3 week block of quality work in your normal conditions. But in those blocks, you keep sauna work in. Like it's basically what do they call that? It's going and sitting in a dry sauna, right? So it's still impactful on the body, right? Because you're sitting in heat, but doing that in, every other day for like 10, 15 minutes doesn't show the same decreases. Like it kind of keeps you a little bit better adapted, and it's not it's not affecting your training by doing that. What is that called? I'm blanking on the term, but it's like yeah, whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about.
It's like the
Instead of
fall
doing,
off, like
right.
that's what you
Yeah.
mean, like the,
Yeah.
I
And
don't know the
it's,
word for it either.
yeah, I'm sorry. It's as soon as I stop thinking about it, it'll come to me. But doing the type of heat adaptation training that is not doing it's like it's basically dry sauna work, right? Going and sitting, or it's primarily dry saunas versus like hot saunas. But again, for Kona, maybe, although Kona can actually be pretty dry
No,
in
it's humid.
comparison.
Like, yeah, no, it's humid. Like
Maybe I'm
you
thinking
need to
of,
be adapted to humid. It's humid.
yeah.
It's horrible.
I remember
Yeah,
there's different portions though. Like when you're out on the lava fields, like it feels like when you're running along Ali'i, right, where there's all the vegetation, like that's like oven, like definitely wet sauna. But there's other places. I mean, the Big Island actually has so many diverse. This is like geology talk.
yeah, yeah.
It's like 40 different biodiversity environments, right, or whatever that's called. So it's fascinating. Anyways, go
Yeah.
ahead. I cut you off.
Well, one thing I wanted to just add to that, because like I have a heat adaptation protocol as well, like for athletes on the mainland who are coming here, or even here, like I have my athletes when they're training for Honu do some specific
Hmm.
heat training protocols. Primarily because a lot of them, like if you work full time, right, like you're training at 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. or, you're not training in the heat of the day, but like at Honu, you're going to be racing in the heat of the day. And it is hotter there, I think, than it is here. So like we do pay attention to heat protocols. But one thing to like, do not get this confused. Your goal is not to adapt to like teach your body how to be dehydrated,
Oh yeah, for
right?
sure.
Like, so like what you're not doing is like purposely depriving yourself of fluids so that in
Hmm.
thinking that like in doing that that you're increasing your body's ability to be adapted to heat, right?
Hmm.
Like that's not what we're doing. You want to really stay on top of hydration, electrolyte hydration. Your goal is not to dehydrate yourself when you're exposing yourself to more heat. doesn't help. It only hurts when you do that. So know that the specific adaptations that you're looking for when you're training in heat is like your body's ability to offset heat via sweat, right?
Hmm.
Like your body's standard blood plasma volume, and like how
Hmm.
much blood does it typically keep around. And like if you're exercising and training in heat every day and you're sweating every day, your blood plasma volume will go up and stay up, and you want that to happen, and you're facilitating that by staying hydrated. So
Yeah.
like when you get dehydrated, your blood plasma volume will decrease and your sweat rate will then decrease. And so you're hurting yourself immensely by not staying on top of hydration when it's hot. So regardless of if you're like training in heat on purpose or training in heat because like that's what you've got, the hydration piece of it is so, so big. And sometimes here, like frankly, it's nearly impossible to keep up with, like depending on
Hmm.
the athlete, how long you're out, what your sweat rate is, how long you've been doing it, that kind of thing. Like it can be the case where like if I have a really high sweat rate, I'm sure that's an adaptation to 20 years of training here,
Mm.
and it is what it is. But like if I'm out for a 4 hour ride, like in right now, which I'm actually not, don't worry, you guys, I'm not riding outside right now because I can't see. After I have my surgery, I will go back to riding outside. But like I've made a choice of like my
Mm.
riding is now inside until I get the surgery. But a 4 hour ride outside in the summertime here, I drink 8 bottles of fluids.
Yeah.
And they're all electrolyte fluids, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
not drinking plain water. Like I'll at
Yeah.
least have, I'll have liquid IV or element or something, some sort of um, hydration electrolyte mixed in my water. But it's literally like 2 bottles per hour is what I'm consuming while I'm out there when it's hot. So don't think for a half a second that like, 1 bottle an hour, one
Yeah.
bottle an hour is
Oh,
plenty when it's not hot out.
right.
But, and I think that's a real big issue too, when like people train on the mainland. And if you do qualify for Kona and you come here and race, like it is the reason
Yeah.
that people quote unquote fail the race in Kona, or like they can't figure out that like, why did they perform so much worse than they thought they were going to if it's your first Kona, is because like you vastly underestimated how much fluid you need to be taking in, right? To stay
Yeah.
hydrated.
I,
And it can be up to 2 bottles per hour. So in a 5 or 6 hour ride, you're talking 10 or 12 bottles. You have to stop a lot to make that happen.
yeah, I totally agree. And I push this on my athletes that choose to ride outside in the heat. They'll report back. I had a one bottle of water and a half bottle of Greek Gatorade, and it was 2 hours. And I'm just like, again, Darwin. And it's not that I haven't said this a billion times, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe not a billion, but quite often. And trying to get this through folks' head, and and a lot of times it is, I don't want to have to stop, or I don't have to plan my route. And I'm like, fueling is a choice. Staying hydrated is a choice. If you want to perform and you want to get better, which is a big driver, right? For probably most athletes we're working with, you know, you've got to do these things. Like this is not an optional. And if I have athletes, well, yeah, I have had athletes race Kona, and yeah, it's been a big part of our pre-race, like, and it's always electrolytes, right? You can splash some water down if you need it to clear your palate, fine, but you need to be on top of the electrolytes. Ideally, we do get sweat composition testing done too, which is now pretty readily available to know what your sweat concentration is, as well as
Mhm.
doing the testing that you mentioned, where it just basically weigh yourself before a moderate ride. What is it, 90 minutes? I can't remember. Or is it 60 minutes?
It's an hour.
Somewhere
I
with
mean,
a,
like
yeah,
I would
an
weigh myself
hour.
before and after an hour long run. I mean, every time I lose 5 pounds,
Yeah.
like in a
Doing
one
something.
hour
Yeah.
easy run,
1 hour
right? Where
easy
I'm
run.
at, that
Yeah.
wasn't even hard. 1 hour easy run and I'm down 5 pounds. And it's like, that's pretty significant. You know what I mean? Like, so like it totally makes sense then of like why after a 2 hour run, I feel absolutely horrific. Well, yeah, because I'm
Crash.
like
Yeah.
down 8 or 9 pounds at that point. And like, and there have been
Yeah.
times where like when I was training and I would finish a run and it was really interesting. So I would note how I felt. And there was a specific feeling that I learned to identify that like that's dehydration. But I only really learned to identify that because I would get on a scale and weigh myself at the end of the run. And then when I would see that like I was down at something like 126, which for me is like crazy light. Like for like I should never be, the only time I'm 126 is when I like have literally lost
Lost
6 pounds.
a lot of,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? Like I like that's a lot for me. Um, but what I noticed is that every time I was running at that weight, it was a run that I finished feeling horrible, right? Versus like a run. And so I started playing around with this because like when I would have a run that I was like, that was pretty good. Like I finished and I still felt strong at the end. And I would come in and weigh myself and like, look at that, I'm still 131, right? So like I did it, right? Like I managed to maintain, my, that's body water is what we're doing, like and blood
Yeah.
plasma volume. But it was
Right.
like when I could manage to maintain that, and the evidence of that is what does the scale say? And so like I'm not super into weighing myself for like weight management, but
It's
where I weigh myself is literally around like how dehydrated am I and at what weight do I need to be in order to feel good at the end of a run. And it's like it was like 130, 131. Like every good run I did, I finished in like I was at least
yeah.
130 pounds. And when I was
Yeah.
under 130 pounds, it was like those are the ones that I was like walking with my head down, feeling horrible.
Right. Right.
Like,
Yeah.
well, there you go. There's
Right.
your information.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's really wise. I mean, you're collecting data, right? And so much. And I will say, like the heat has a particular like oppressive feeling to it. From my experience, and I'm not, I'm not good in the heat, and it's something I have chosen, right? I know I could be better. I know that there are things I could do, either from, heat adaptation. There's probably some mindset work that I could do around it. And if I ever qualified for Kona, I would do those things. I don't ever care. Like, it's not pleasant for me, right? Like, it's not something that I want to be good at. And so I let it go. But for athletes that are very conscious about either performance in the heat or talking about wanting to be better in the heat, or, we develop similar protocols. And I think, weighing yourself, being up on hydration, and then, yeah, delving it out in an appropriate manner can get you better. I still really, and there's some athletes that I want to be just as fast in the heat, as I would be normal. It's like that, like if you, yeah, it's just not physiologically possible. Like if you had better condition, I mean, you see this at the Olympics level, right? Not just age groupers, right? If you have super hot marathon temperatures, right, for the elites, like they're going to slow down, and these are the best athletes in the world. So what makes you think that you can actually overcome this to be as fast as you normally are in the heat? Like it just doesn't work that way. So anyways,
Everyone
yeah.
slows down some. It's just the
Yeah,
degree.
the degree. Yeah.
And so this is reminding me. So as you guys probably know, like I coach masters in Kailua.
Yeah, tell us
We
that.
talked earlier about like the hot water. So like currently, this is what we know about hot water in pools is that wind plays a giant role in offsetting heat from the water. So like when it's windy, our water temps can stay pretty reasonable. I mean, it's still going to be warm. It's going to be like 82, but like most athletes here are like they're adapted to 82 and it's like not that bad. We can manage. But on if we get a couple of days and it doesn't take long with sun and light wind and a shallow pool like that is in
Oh yeah.
Kailua, like it heats up like really, really quickly and it can get really hot. And so I end up being reasonably good at anticipating how hot the water's going to be just based on what the wind has been doing the last couple of days. So like today's Tuesday, I'll coach masters tonight. It's been really windy the last couple of days. My pool is cooler. I'm guessing Kailua pool is going to be cooler. So like on purpose, I will have a set for them tonight that is like bigger, longer with like
Hmm.
more threshold work in it. Because last week, frankly, it was really hot. Like all week, the wind was like light. I knew the water was going to be really hot. So I'll say this. As a coach, I anticipate the
Hmm.
water temperatures when I'm designing the workout for the
Hmm.
athlete. The changes I tend to make is I will tend to make the intervals shorter, right? So we're probably not doing anything longer than like 100 at a time without stopping and resting. I will have more like roomier send offs. So like if normally this you would go off 130, I might extend it to 140 just to give you an extra 10 seconds, to let your body temp cool down, get your breath back before we go again. And I will incorporate less total volume of like threshold work,
Hmm.
right? So the workout is more aerobic, still a little bit of like speed work splashed in, but it might just be like a couple of speedy 25s or 50s or build or something like that instead of like, 6-1's best effort off 130 or whatever. Like that's one that we might do tonight when I'm like, yeah, the water is probably going to be cooler versus when it's hotter. I'm just like not going to ask them to push their bodies that hard
Yeah.
when it's that hot. So, but a
Yeah.
couple things I've noticed as well, and this is just like me witnessing what's going on, right? Because I have lots of different athletes that show up to these kinds of workouts. The ones that come all the time and put themselves in that warm water frequently
Hmm.
tend to adapt better and it gets better and better for them. So while they do still slow down, Like everyone is slower. They will slow down less or blow up less than the athletes that haven't come that much. The next pattern is the smaller females tend to do way better in warmer, hot conditions than like a bigger male. And that just has to do with like the amount of energy your body to make a big body go fast takes a lot of energy, and energy generates heat. So like if you have
Hmm.
a bigger unit that is creating more heat, and then you put that unit in a hot environment, like they're going to overheat quicker than others. And so for the bigger athletes, they have to be way more patient about their pacing in the
Hmm.
beginning of a longer set than like a smaller female who is adapted necessarily needs to be, right? So there'll be times where like if I'm watching in like sort of my fastest group, I've got, you know, 5 or 6 swimmers who are pretty regular, who are all like really solid swimmers. And one of them is kind of a thinner, smaller female, and she's incredible. And like her, she's just incredible. Her endurance, her pacing, her everything is just like a clockwork.
Hmm.
And it's so funny because like she will let these bigger guys go ahead and swim ahead of her in the beginning of the set, just
Right.
knowing like on round three, it's all going to look different. And sure enough, like round three, you know, like she's the one, she hasn't even gotten past her. She's just holding pace and everybody else is like falling off
Fine.
and dying.
Yeah.
And so what I'll tell the bigger guys, and some of them have been doing, and it actually works, is that they'll bring a cooler that has some ice in it, and they'll just leave it at the end of their lane. And then they'll take like ice cubes
Hmm.
and hold them in their hands. And so if they have 20 seconds in between hundreds or whatever, like they will reach into this cooler, grab ice, hold on to the ice, right? And it just cools them off 1 degree or
Yeah.
whatever, that allows them to then, you know, continue the set really well. And so if those bigger guys come frequently, pace themselves well through the set, like don't get overzealous in the beginning. You have to hold back some, knowing that your body temp is going to heat up. It will get harder. And then bring the ice to help your body. That's the best way for you to manage. And and then there's times where like I'll see a bigger guy, like when the water's hot, and I'll see a bigger guy walk in, and like I haven't seen him for 2 months, you know, and he's like, well, I'm back to masters. I'm like, oh God, okay. And I will just warn them, like the
Yeah.
water's
It's
really
going to be
hot, like
hard.
this is going to be hard for you, so like be patient with yourself, sit out a 50 whenever you need, you know, take care of yourself like that. And then the final point that I'll make, and this is from experience for myself too, because like I mean genuinely, like I hate feeling like I'm suffocating in the water when I'm swimming and like it's really hot, and I'm not capable of hitting and holding the paces that I'm capable of when the water is a normal temp. And what I've found, and when I show this to athletes, it makes them feel a little bit better. Do the workout to the appropriate feeling,
Hmm.
not the appropriate pace. Right. So, like, if you're doing a set of like quote unquote threshold 100s and they're all like 3 seconds slower than they would have been if the water was cooler, don't judge yourself on that. Just like let it happen, let it be. It is what it is. And literally the second you get back in water that is a normal temp, your paces come back immediately.
Yep.
There's no like adaptation period back into like you don't need a couple of days of exposure to cooler water before your paces come
Hmm.
back. Like your paces are just instantly, immediately back. And that can be really fun. And so
Hmm.
it is a matter of like let it go, don't dwell on how slow it is. Put in the right effort consistently. Help yourself with ice as much as you can, and just don't judge. And have faith that when it cools off, it's going to be the right thing. And I think a lot of that advice goes for biking and running too. I just
Absolutely.
use swimming because like I have a whole group of people where I see people doing it well, and I see people blowing up, and I can see like like patterns and trends that play into, are you blowing up or are you not?
Right.
And
Right.
that's what it is.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, with the run, if you're using heart rate and it's an easy zone 2 math run and, you've got to walk every five
Hmm.
minutes, that's
Walk,
the right
fine.
effort.
Hmm.
That is what your body can do under these conditions. So
Hmm.
you're still adapting, you're still adapting, right? Or you're doing the work to adapt in for the session for the purpose of that session, whether you've put that session in your training or your coach has, right? Like an aerobic, saying, well, it was hot, so I just had to, I just let my heart rate come up higher. Now you're maybe into tempo, maybe even, I mean, I've seen some where it's like threshold, and that was not the purpose of that run. I don't know what else to say. So
Yeah.
There's definitely a
Yeah.
mindset
You
around
change the
walking.
stimulus of the
Yeah,
workout.
right. That was not the purpose. And so I hope you felt good because, but a lot
Hmm.
of times they actually don't feel good. They're like, I was still slow and it felt horrible and like the negative spirals. And I'm like, there's I have a work colleague, science colleague who lived in Phoenix, and I lived in Phoenix for a summer, and he said the best thing you can do with the heat is just to yield. And he didn't mean stop, right, and like hide, but you just have to accept these are the conditions, and how am I going to, like you said, manage myself in these conditions? And that might mean slowing down, taking care of ourselves, bringing ice. I mean, yeah, like if you're going to run it when it's 100, take a cooler with you, have it in the car, be ready, or put it along your course, or do loops. I'm a big fan of doing loops when it's really hot, because then you can cut it. You can cut it short, you can rehydrate. It's boring,
I
okay,
did that.
fine.
Yeah, I did
But
that too. Like, well, I would drive my car like down because I live at the top of a hill, which I always just hated running in. Like to finish a long run,
I know
it's
it's the
like the
worst.
last
Yeah.
mile straight uphill is like terrible. And so, like the way I managed my long runs is I would put 4 bottles full of ice and electrolytes, whatever, like in a cooler so that they wouldn't like all melt and get hot in my car. And then I'd put the coolers in my car, drive down to the park at the bottom of the hill, leave my car there, and then I would run loops in multiple directions. So I'd like run a loop one
Hmm.
way, come back to the car, drink stuff, ice down my bra, whatever, and then run a loop another way, and then come back. So it's sort of like every 4 miles or so, I'm back at my car. And
Hmm.
I'm, stuffing myself with ice and like and hydrating as much as I can, and then I'd run the 4 miles like in a different direction, and that was actually a really good way to manage, and like, so I never really got to go super far away, but I could do like, I didn't have to run the same loop over and over, right? I could run sort of 3 different 4 mile loops, but I was also never more than like 2 miles away from my car,
Yeah.
and which again, yeah,
Yeah.
so you could
Smart.
bail and stop if you had to, but
Yeah.
that was
Smart
a good
management.
way.
Yeah, I think there's,
Yeah.
it does take more planning. So often, right, when we don't plan, then we don't have the sessions we want, right? Like there's that
It's
piss
funny how
poor
that works.
planning, right? Like, yeah. And so, oh, you didn't plan for water stops. You didn't plan for, yeah, it's all manageable. It's all doable, and you're still building fitness.
Hmm.
Just may need
Hmm.
to tweak it a bit,
Hmm.
bring it down a
And be
notch, and
realistic about it.
yeah,
Just be realistic,
yeah,
and like, and just, yeah, know that like if I'm a little bit slower, it's fine. I'm still getting what I needed out of that session. But genuinely, on the key sessions, you're not a wimp for going inside and
yeah.
doing them in air
No.
conditioning. That's actually probably, especially if you want to be competitive, that's probably the smartest thing you can do. So it's not wimpy.
I will maybe recommend my athlete listen to this, because I've said that multiple times. Well, I hate the trainer, and it's like, well, but you said you want speed work, and you won't, your work requires you to ride, when the ride time you have available is like 2 to 4 in the afternoon, right? Like I can't ride when it's dark out. That's also Darwin, Darwin Awards. So like use it as a tool. You want to get better, or do you want to ride outside? I mean, you want to ride outside?
Hmm.
Okay, fine, then you just need to ride and let the heat be the intensity, and that might mean the quality goes down. So
Hmm.
it's a choice. It's a choice that I leave up to them. So,
All
anyways, do
right.
you have anything else that you want to add into? I think this is good.
I
Went
think
a
we
little,
covered it. I think that was
yeah.
good.
So, all right. Well, we will chat again soon. And if you guys out there listening have any topics for us that you want us to discuss, please let us know. Hit us up. We would be happy to discuss. Thanks,
Yeah. Take care.
Michelle.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.